Golf, 90% mental, 10% physical. Now the object of golf is to get the ball in the hole and as little strokes as possible. Now, the name golf, a lot of people used to think the title stood for gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. I found out through my research that this is a folktale and it is not true. So if this was stopping you from being interested in it all, do not believe it. So today, I'm going to inform you a little bit about the history of golf, the differences of equipment between now and back in the 1500s, and the differences in the clothing. First of all, the history. The game of golf was created in the east coast of Scotland in the 15th century in the Kingdom of Fife. What they first used to do is they used to take a little pebble and they used to hit it around some sand dunes with a club or a stick of some sort. Now back then they didn't play with a hole like they do today. That comes along later. There's now a debate between who created golf because the English believe they created it because they have this stained glass window in Gloucester Cathedral, which resembles a golfer. So they think that they created it, but the Scottish believe they did because of their long line of history. So there's kind of a debate between who actually created it. Second of all, the clothing. Now the clothing is quite different from baseball or soccer teams. They do not wear jerseys. Golf was more of an upperclassman back hundreds of years ago. And so it was a little more formal attire that you were supposed to wear. But of course, back in the 15th and 16th century, they just wore their kilts because that is all they owned. They didn't have any of the suits and ties and stuff like that we have today. Now in the 1900s, they wore long trousers, full morning jackets with ties, dressed because their gentleman rep was to wear suits, and so they would just wear their suits to play golf in. Here's an example. This is how they wore. But so between the wars, which would be between the 1900s and the 1950s, they abandoned the suit jackets in favor of sleeve shirts with bow ties. So bow ties became very popular there during this time. It was the thing to wear. Second of all, 1950s to 1960s, two famous golfers named Arnold Palmer and Gary Player. They loosened up the attire to khaki and collared shirts. Just made the game more free, more people could play it. It just loosened things up a little bit. Towards the 1970s to the 1980s, Jack Nicklaus and Nick Faldo, who are also famous players, wore exuberant, bright colors like pinks and blues, oranges and yellows. They had these colors in sweaters, vests, or sweater vests. Nowadays, in the 21st century, they wore sports brand shirts like Nike or Adidas or any type of sports brand, or they wear Under Armour, which they wear under their polo shirts. Now the equipment. The golf ball was made first of wood. It wasn't round. It didn't have a great flight to it, but that's just all they had to deal with at the time. After that ball, they had a ball called the feathering, which was a leather outer covering with feathers inside. Both handmade, non-uniform and standard, so it wasn't real repetitive motion of creating these things. Later, they made a ball called the gutty, and it was made from a mold, like a clay kind of mold, which made balls more uniform in size and in weight, so everything was more the same, more repetitive. Nowadays, they use a ball called the Haskell. It was made with dimples, which help with the flight and the roll. Inside, it had rubber core wrapped in elastic coat with plastic surface. Then there's the golf clubs. First golf clubs were made of wood, just like the ball, because that's all they had. They used different types of wood for the shaft, which is the stick part, and then the head, which is the wood. Some of the different types of wood were ash, hazel, apple, beech, and pear. Those were the first woods that they used. Later, they used a sturdier wood like hickory. That was the upgrade for them. But nowadays they use steel. You can use steel for the head or the shaft, or graphite, aluminum, titanium, or more stick clubs. So just to recap, history is made by the Scottish in the 15th century. The clothes, they've gone from kilts to suits to loosening the clothing. Equipment, wooden ball to rubber core with elastic covering. Clubs from wooden to steel. And I hope that some of the stuff I've told you today has maybe given you a little bit of history of golf, maybe a little bit of an interest, so maybe you would try it out sometime.